in that moment, I even feel chills as I say it now because it was like something broke open. It was like, all right, let's go. So I just feel this like energy go boom. And then things started happening really, really, really fast. I knew what I was going towards. And I just kept saying over and over and over again to my husband, to myself, to anyone I would have a conversation with, 2024 is my quantum leap year. 2024 is my quantum leap year. 2024 is my quantum leap year. And I meant that shit. Like, I was like, I don't care what I have to do. 2024 is my quantum leap year. I had no reason to believe I was wealthy. I actually had every reason to be like, I'm a fucking loser. Like, everything in my life is going to shit, right? But I became highly aware that the lesson was that I had to become completely neutral around my money situation, have zero reaction to it, almost gaslight myself into believing it wasn't even true, like what I was seeing in front of me wasn't even accurate, and feel abundant without having anything. What if it happened this year? Like, what if by the end of this year, I'm like sitting in my room on New Year's Eve, the clock's about to turn over, we're going from 2025 to 2026, I'm looking back at the year, and holy shit, I actually did it. The thing that I thought was going to take me 6 years, I experienced that this year.
Welcome to the James Xander Trip podcast. I have an incredible guest for you today, someone whose life and work is infused with magic, intention, and deep energetic wisdom. Micki Morris is an intuitive manifestation coach and energy healer, guiding others into crafting their own personal paradise and stepping into their ideal timeline. She's not just a master of manifestation, she's an architect of wealth energy, helping people invite the spirit and the entity of money into their lives. Today, we're going to dive into her extraordinary journey, her insights on wealth energy, her spiritual awakening, her work as an energy healer, and her relationship with the divine. So, grab your mushroom latte, settle in, and let's get into it. Micki Morris, welcome to the show.
I love it. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I'm so happy to have you on the podcast. I discovered you through Instagram, and one of the first things I noticed was how authentic your energy felt. Like, there's quite a few people doing Reiki healings on Instagram. Some people are doing tarot cards. Some of it feels a little bit manufactured. But when I discovered your account, there was something in the energy that I felt such resonance. It's like you weren't trying to sell me something. You were just there, present, and I could literally feel the energy of Reiki, which I hadn't really explored until that point. I was like, wow, what is it that makes you, in a sea of Instagram accounts, yours just popped out at me as being very authentic?
That's beautiful. Thank you. You know what's interesting is when I was little, so I grew up in the church, and I remember when I was little, the two spiritual gifts that I wanted, like the only two that spoke to me when I was like 4 or 5, was I wanted to be able to lay hands on people and heal them, and I wanted to be able to speak in tongues. Those were like the two things that I wanted. And I remember there was like a room at the back of the church where there would be people there that were the healers of the church. And if you needed prayer, you would go in there and they'd like anoint you and lay hands on you. And some people would walk out healed, some people wouldn't. But I would just look at this room and be like, that's what I want to do. That's what I want to do. And then as I grew up, it was really interesting because it was really instilled in me that women were not allowed to have spiritual gifts. They weren't allowed to be healers. They weren't allowed to speak in tongues. They weren't allowed to like do any of the things. And so when certain things like the gift of prophecy or like intuitive vision started coming through, or like I would start hearing from the other side or seeing things, or I started having dreams of healing people with my hands before I ever became an energy healer, it started to freak me out because I'm like, I mean, this is beautiful and this is what I've always wanted, but it felt like something I wasn't allowed to pursue. And so I actually didn't leave religion until 5 years ago. And then I was really drawn to distance healing and energy healing from other people. And I remember watching this one video of this guy who, I don't even know, it was like something that YouTube had just suggested to me. And I was watching him and I remember him saying, you know, I've been watching distance Reiki healing videos for like the last few years. And then Spirit came in and was like, it's time for you to be the one that's offering these things. Like, not just receiving the healing energy, but if you feel called to be the one that's like giving it. And it just totally, it's like all the emotions and all of the desires that I had came rushing back of being this energy healer. And so I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do it. And I remember saying to the universe, like, I don't know how to get started. I don't know where to even go. Like, I'm a mom of 5 kids. I can't go somewhere to get a Reiki initiation. I can't like go. I didn't have connections, it felt like. And so I was like, just show me what I need to do. All I needed is like that initial initiation. I just need to know how to almost like grab onto the Reiki energy, like pull it down and be able to use it. That's all I need, and I'll be good to go. And so I came across like this course on Udemy, and it was like so not well, firstly, the interesting thing was everything that he was going through, it did feel very like you were saying before. It felt performative. It felt very surface level. It felt ingenuine, like it felt kind of off, but the actual information in it, I realized that spirit and the universe had been leading me through this initiation and this process for years, because everything that they talked about of these different aspects of energy healing and the different pieces of the puzzle that would make you a really potent and powerful healer, I had already been organically walked through these different portions of my life, including working for energy healers and being in that space before I even decided to work for myself. And so I didn't actually even fully go through the full course because something started to feel a little off, and I didn't realize what it was until afterwards. So with the Reiki community, firstly, it's not an energy that originates in the United States. Like, this is like a sacred energy healing practice that was like from China. And it used to be a very closed practice. It actually used to be so closed that women were not allowed to perform Reiki either. So it was newer for women to even have the initiation of this energy. And so I started kind of feeling a little interestingly, like almost a little off about that, just because when you start to tap into energies that are kind of closed practice, or women are not allowed to do certain things, sometimes it can come with spiritual baggage, right? The other thing that I noticed was I started noticing videos on Instagram where people would be sharing their experiences with going all the way through level 1, 2, 3, and then all the way up to master level for Reiki. And the interesting thing that they were sharing was once they got to this master level initiation, um, it was almost like they were spiritually bonded via like an energetic cord to whoever the master was. And some of those Reiki masters that were creating those initiations for people to tap into didn't have the highest intention for people. And it almost became a trap where people would feel like they were in love and light, feel like they were learning how to do white magic or, white light energy healing. And then they would get all the way through and there would be something waiting to kind of leech on to them at the end. And so once I kind of started connecting the dots, I was like, this is so interesting that I didn't feel the call to go all the way through this program and do like this master Reiki initiation. All I needed was that first, almost like an awakening of how to actually get the energy to come to me. And as soon as that happened, it was like, it must have been past life. It must have been that I've been doing this for many, many, many lifetimes, because it was like all of a sudden I didn't need a teacher. All of a sudden it was like, it wasn't, yes, it was Reiki that initially opened the door. And I think Reiki, the reason I call it Reiki still is it's the easiest thing for people to understand when they're coming across me on Instagram, or if they opt into like my free healing on YouTube or whatever. But it feels beyond that. It almost feels like a personally channeled healing energy that I don't quite have a name for, especially when I'm doing healing and like light language will come through. Like, that's not something that they teach you. It's something that just kind of comes online and is activated in you. So, and then I remember the first time I posted a video publicly, I was sweating, James. I was like, I can't even believe I'm doing this. I can't even believe I'm like showing up like this. So I posted this video and I remember sitting on the couch, like refreshing the reel. And all I needed was one person to be able to say, I could feel your energy through the screen. That's all I needed. And as soon as I got that validation, I was like, oh my God, thank God. Like someone can feel my energy. Because if one person can feel it, then that means that there's a collective that can feel it, right? But I remember that first reel that I posted being like, people are gonna think I'm crazy. Like people are gonna think I'm absolutely insane. But it took off. And before I ever even charged for a session, and that was a whole journey of starting at a lower price and building my intuitive abilities, figuring out exactly what I wanted the sessions to look like, feeling into what I felt like my worthiness was of like charging certain prices. Before I even did that, I was just posting little mini Reiki healing videos online that people could tap into just on Reels and on TikTok. And I started getting hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of comments of people being like, holy shit, I don't know what that was, but things in my body started shifting. And I was like, okay, this is my calling apparently. So it's been really fun to incorporate that with manifestation teaching because I feel like you need both. Like book knowledge and me telling you things only goes so far. You need that second piece where you can go in and actually shift things on an energetic and like cellular DNA level so that your body can expand to receive more abundance and wealth and all the things. So it's definitely been a journey, but now it's so funny that it's been less than a year that I've leaned into that because it feels like I've always been
Uh-huh.
this. Isn't that interesting? Like as you go on your journey and you become more of who you actually are, it doesn't feel like you're moving further away from your true self. It feels like a coming home almost. Like, oh, I've always been this. I've just been peeling back the layers a little bit.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's so true. And I so resonate with that. You just needed one comment to validate that the energy was being felt. I feel the same
Yes,
thing when I started YouTube, right? The first video, it's so scary to post. I'm like, I just need one person to tell me that they got value out of this. So I know I'm not just screaming into
exactly.
the void, you know? And
Yes, exactly.
but your Reiki sessions, they are very customized, you know? Is it even accurate to call it Reiki, or is it, how do you see it now when you go into these sessions? Is it purely a channeled download? What's happening for you on the inside when you're doing these sessions?
Yeah, it's really interesting. So I do prefer doing one-on-one sessions where people are paying me for a custom session as opposed to the collective, because when I first go in, before I even create these sessions, firstly, for anyone who's watching this, to give context, I pre-record all the sessions. So I'm not doing it live face to face in front of the person for a couple of reasons. Firstly, I've had people report that sometimes the energy comes through really, really strongly and their body has a really visceral reaction and they have to pause it and take a break because so many things are being downloaded and activated. It's pretty rare for someone to get like sick, but I have had people be like, oh my God, I had to call in sick to work the next day because it hit me like a ton of bricks, or it didn't feel like it was too much in the moment, but then afterwards their body started having reactions, mainly like cleansing reactions, like maybe all of a sudden they have to use the bathroom more than usual, or their appetite fluctuates. So I started just doing pre-recorded so that if it got to a point where it was too much, someone could pause the video and come back later. And then it also helps me keep the energy a little bit separate. You were actually the first person to do a custom healing session with me where you filmed a video to like share some of your energy with me before I created the session. 99% of the time, I have no idea who these people are. I have never seen them before in my life. I've never heard their voice in my life. But I like it that way because it means that the messages that come through that are really accurate, there's absolutely no way that I would have had any way of knowing
Hmm.
the certain messages that came through, right? And I think sometimes when people hear like psychic or like they see people even doing these sessions, it's like, oh, that's a parlor trick. Like they must have like looked that person up on social media, or they're just using very generic information to get whatever message across. And for me, the fact that I don't know these people, that I've never had, they're not friends, they're not like consistent clients where I'm doing one-on-one sessions with them where I would have any context about their life. A lot of the time that people come to me, I don't know anything about them. All I know is what's being told to me. So with collective sessions, when I'm pre-recording, because there are so many people that will access it, firstly, I don't get as many intuitive downloads because there's just too much energy. The other thing that can happen that I noticed is if I'm doing a session collectively on something that's perceived as negative, so like clearing out anxiety, for example, I get hit. It's like standing under a waterfall of that energy, of anxious energy, because I'm feeling the energy of every single person that will ever watch that session while I'm recording it. And so I started noticing that if I was doing sessions like that, even though people were having incredible results, my physical body was suffering because it would take me days to like purge all of that energy out of me, especially because sometimes people can have lower vibrational entities that are connected to them that don't want that person healing, right? So then they're coming at me because I'm the one that's helping them clear it all out. So I started shifting my collective sessions to only being more positive things like calling in abundance, because I'm not necessarily going to be tapping into a lower vibrational energy, clearing that out. I love tapping into abundance energy because if everyone that's watching that session comes through and they all have this really beautiful golden energy abundance light coming through them, I get to experience that as well. So I did start to shift the collective sessions that I was doing a little bit because I noticed that I just wasn't willing to put myself almost in energetic harm's way to do some of these more intense collective sessions, even though there were so many people that loved them. I was like, I personally can't offer, I don't have that energetic capacity right now. But what happens with the one-on-one sessions is, firstly, I tap into that individual person's energy field and I tap into their highest self and their spirit team. The only thing that I can describe it as is like having my eyes closed and feeling something rush towards me, like a really warm, vibrating energy. Like I feel the person's highest self and spirit team literally come like pouring in, as if like that feeling that you get if somebody's like pouring water over you and you can feel it going over your body, that's what it feels like. So I tap in and I just ask them before I even start the session, like, you know this person better than I do. You know what they're dealing with. You've been with them their entire life. So there's going to be things that is stopping them, blocking them, holding them back that I would have no way of knowing unless you tell me. So if there are very specific messages that need to come through, or if there's a certain age where a trauma occurred, where there's a piece of them that's stuck in that particular age that needs to be cleared, or a certain age where a subconscious belief got locked in that needs to get cleared in order for them to call in abundance now as a big person, like guide me through that. And so what's interesting is I didn't start getting those intuitive, really loud messages in my head giving me very specific information about people until I put myself in the position to be doing the one-on-one healing sessions. I didn't like I did have dreams while I was asleep at night giving me intuitive messages about people, like trickling in throughout the years. But it's interesting that sometimes certain things don't come online for us until we say yes and we put ourselves in that experience and we immerse ourselves in that, then it's like things can come online. So that's what happened for me. Was I didn't know that I was super psychic and intuitive for other people's situations. I could receive collective messages or feel collective energies. Like with COVID, I knew that was, I didn't know exactly what it was going to look like, but I had intuitive dreams about that for about 3 years leading up to it. Um, but I wasn't getting specific information during, while I was walking around about people or their traumas or what they had gone through. So when I started doing these one-on-one sessions, this voice would come in and it would be giving me very specific information, like, or putting images in my mind. Like, I could tell if there was a really negative, like, male presence in their life, or I could tell if someone had been speaking negatively over them from like a certain age, or if they had uterine trauma, especially like as a female, if they had been like abused in the past, I would actually start feeling the pain in my uterus. That's the other thing, is like sometimes I'll get sensations in parts of my body that correlate to whoever I'm directly connected to during the session. So if I am doing the session and I start to feel a lot of like anxiety in my chest, I'll know that they're also simultaneously feeling anxiety during the session. And so it allows me to be able to coach them through it, because I know that they're having anxiety. Or if I all of a sudden start crying during a session, it's usually because they're also crying on the other side. So it's this really interesting energetic connection that transcends time and space. It started as Reiki, but I feel like I can't even, I just call them custom healing sessions now, because I'm bringing in light language. I'm bringing in, yes, hand movements and Reiki, but also just like my personally channeled energy. I'm bringing in any intuitive or channeled messages that are coming through. Um, Before I even start the session, I'll like look at my little crystal collection and see which one of those speaks to me. Like I'll choose an incense that speaks to me. So all of it is very customized, and like you've had a couple sessions with me. They're very different every time. So it's not like it's the same thing that's happening. The energy that is there that we tap into is different depending on what day or time that we're going in. So they are very interesting experiences. I even sometimes I question that. I think the other reason why I call it Reiki is because of just SEO type things, where it's like,
Right.
I think sometimes when people are healers or they're intuitive or they're channelers or they're doing that type of work, they get really creative with the titles that they give to themselves or how they market themselves. And I feel like if it's not mainstream, sometimes your ideal clientele doesn't know how to find you because they don't know what intuitive
Mm.
galactic channeler is. But if they see manifestation coach and Reiki healer, they almost have a container to put that in a little bit easier. So I've kept the verbiage like that more so for marketing purposes, but I know that it's a little bit different once I actually go in and start to do the work, if that makes sense.
Totally. Yeah, it does make sense. It's funny because I was not familiar with Reiki, and had I not sensed your energy before on Instagram and someone said, go do this Reiki session, I probably would have said, no, I'm not interested. But because I saw your energy and I saw how you were channeling it through and it was coming through you, I was like, okay, there's something really interesting going on here. Um,
Yeah.
I can attest to your sessions being really powerful. The first one we did, um, I had not sent you a video. I just sent you a text, and you send everyone a text form to fill out. And in the form, it says,
Yeah.
"What is your number one intention?" And I put two intentions. I said, I want to work on money and unblock any money blocks. And then I put, I think there's some childhood blocks that need to be worked on. And then I looked at the text and it said, choose one intention only. I'm like, okay. So I deleted the childhood blocks. I sent you just the money part. And then 3 days later, you sent me a video. And the first few minutes of the video, you're like, James, I could swear there was something about childhood blocks in your
Yeah.
text. And so I did this whole childhood healing for you. And then I went back to the email and there was nothing about childhood blocks. That blew my mind. The fact
It
that
was
you were
really
able
weird.
to perceive that. Like, I don't know how that information comes through to you, but that was wild.
So with that one in particular, and I've had this happen a few times, the only way I can describe it is like my eyes playing tricks on me, where I'm reading something and I'm fully aware that I'm reading it, but then I go back and it's not there.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's like I'm physically reading childhood blocks, and then I go back and I'm like, this is so weird. Why can I not find anything about the childhood blocks? So with that particular case, it was bizarre because I remember, obviously I'm not remembering correctly, or maybe I was accessing a different timeline or something, but I remember reading something about childhood blocks, which could just be us being psychically connected and like me receiving whatever you said in the message initially. It was almost like I read it, but then I went back and it wasn't there. And I was like, that's very weird. But I had another client who said something similar. What happened with hers was she had paid with PayPal. And for some reason, when people pay for the sessions with PayPal, it completely glitches out the notes section that they put on Stan. So I got nothing. Like it was completely blank. I was like, okay, this is weird. but I knew she probably had typed something. So I emailed her 3 times before I did the session. And I was like, hey, just want to let you know it glitched. I didn't get an intention come through. Like, if you don't respond to me, like, I do have to deliver this. So I'll just channel whatever comes through. But, I want to make sure that you feel like you get what you paid for. Anyway, she never responded to me. So I was just like, all right, guess we're going in and like seeing what's available. So I went in and connected with her guides, and they started telling me what she was going through and showing me different images. And some of the sessions get weird because some of them are like, it's not even people that have passed that are coming through or guides that are coming through. It's like people that don't exist yet, like spirit babies will be coming through. Like the person hasn't even conceived these children yet, but they're coming through and giving me messages. So I think it was one of those situations where it was like information that there is no way I would have had access to, but I film the session and I deliver it to her. And she goes, this is really weird. I eventually got the email saying that you didn't receive my intention, but you channeled exactly what I was looking for. And at that point, it's like, I come to this with such a humility because it's like, it weirds me out sometimes. Like, there's no way I could possibly know this. So I can't even take credit and be like, oh my God, I'm like incredible. Like, I'm so great. You know what I mean? Because it's like, I'm not the one giving myself this information. There's no way for me to know this stuff. And so but I think it's also expanded, like doing that work and doing the healing work has also simultaneously expanded my relationship with wealth and money and abundance and manifestation and even how I run my business, because I started to recognize that none of these ideas were my own. I was simply a channel. I think once we understand that we as humans are like, we're just vessels, we're just channels that bring things from the quantum, and our power as humans is to be able to birth things into the physical world through manifestation. When we realize that that's all that's happening, it allows us to kind of just lay down the imposter syndrome, lay down any inferiority, lay down superiority complexes as well, understanding that we're not the ones that are the only creators. We're like co-creating with the universe. And a lot of these ideas that want to come through already exist. Like when I started channeling both the How to Jump Timelines Academy and the Mystical Money Mastery program, it was like another entity was coming in and telling me what to do. It was like a step by step, even with like, especially with Mystical Money Mastery. I remember kind of getting intuitive hits every now and again that I would just open up the notes on my phone and type in. So I had the skeleton of what it was going to look like. I kind of had the blueprint of kind of how I wanted it to be, but I had zero motivation to actually sit down and do it. It was really weird. So I just had to trust that motivation was naturally going to come when it was time. I went to California, which was really beautiful and intense. I hadn't been back in like 5 years. And so being back, it was very clear how much inner work I had done, very clear how healed my nervous system was, very clear that I was experiencing a completely different version of California that I had ever experienced, very clear that I was on a different timeline. And then I came back and it was like, it almost felt like California was a portal, almost like a vortex that I went through. I came back, my body crashed. I was absolutely exhausted for like 3 days, 4 days, could not get out of bed, was just so tired. And I was like, what is going on? On the 4th day, I woke up and this voice was like, it's time. Go sit at your computer. And for the next 9 days, I sat there and channeled for like 60 or 70 hours in 9 days. It was the most intense. It felt like something was standing next to me the entire time and I was just sitting at the computer, and it was just like, it felt like I was standing under a waterfall of just information coming in, and I was typing as fast as I could and creating these slides and putting this in, and then I would crash because the energy was so intense. It would physically make me either dizzy or feel like I was going to throw up. It was so intense. So I would lay down, I would take a nap for a few hours, I would get up and it would be like time to go again. And it was this process of like, I couldn't think about anything else. I couldn't do anything else for that period of the 9 days. And even though it was 9 days and like these 60 or 70 hours of channeling, it felt like months at the same time. It was so interesting how time kind of warps when you're in one of these channeling phases. But because of the work that I had done energetically, even with clients and feeling these different messages come through, it was like I was fully surrendered and fully understanding that this was a program that I wasn't necessarily creating, because I'm not the one that invented universal laws, right? Like, I didn't create the entity of money. Like, I didn't invent any of these ideas. My only job is to package it in a way where the people that are meant to be in my collective can understand it really easily, and it downloads and it clicks into their subconscious, or it unlocks something for them so that they can continue to be the versions of themselves that they need to be. It's like, I think when I look at it like that, with the healings, with creating the programs, there is no there the only imposter syndrome that comes in is like having to consistently remind myself that I'm ready for that, and that obviously these entities or these energies chose me for a reason, just like how I remind myself, like, my children chose me for a reason, right? Like, they knew who they were choosing, just like how our pets choose us. Like, they know who they're choosing, right? So when I remind myself that these programs have chosen me, these clients have chosen me, energy healing has chosen me, combined with all of these really interesting visions I get in my sleep of what must be past lives of me doing this for so long, it just feels like an honor to be able to channel these things, but also a remembrance. It feels like every day coming back into the version of myself I must have been before my memory was wiped and I came back here for another lifetime. You know what I mean?
I love how you say that these things are choosing you. So often in our ego, we're like, we are choosing the goals, we're choosing our
Yeah.
desires. But what you're saying here is actually these energies, these spirits, they're choosing us to work with us.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, what is your thoughts on free will versus
Mhm.
destiny? How much of our life is actually from a higher self perspective already pre-planned, and all the checkpoints have been like established, all the clues have been planted, versus how much of it is actually us in our 3D self making these
Right.
decisions?
So everything is free will. You have the option to say yes or no. You have the option to opt in and say yes, or you have the option to be like, no, I don't really feel like it. I'm reading a book right now called Reincarnation, The Missing Link in Christianity, which has been an interesting read for me because the current church, the current way that Christianity is presented, and the religion that I've completely opted out of, doesn't teach reincarnation, right? Like, they teach that you have one life on this earth, you have to make all the decisions before you die, and if you don't make the correct decision, then you go to hell. And what's interesting about modern day Christianity is they kind of teach free will, but they also teach this idea that God already knows who's going to go to heaven and who's going to go to hell. And so there's always this debate within the religious community on, do we actually have free will, or is God creating these souls and creating these lives with only one life to live where he already knows where people are going to go? I've just decided that that's not true. I don't believe in that. I don't think that that's correct. I don't think, um for many reasons I don't believe that's correct. So the idea of reincarnation really, and it speaks to me because firstly, we have people who don't live full lives, right? We have children that die, we have babies that die, we have, people that get cancer and aren't able to live a full life. We have people that make one mistake and they're incarcerated for the rest of their life. They get, 50 years to life, and then they're just stuck there. And so you have all of these examples of people that didn't get to fulfill their purpose, right? Or fulfill their life. What I believe happens is whether life comes in and takes over, or you make a bad decision and it leads to this domino effect where all of a sudden your life is cut short. I believe that we get to come back and kind of reboot ourselves and be like, okay, let's try again. And I believe that you can come back as many times as it takes in order for you to fulfill your purpose. I also believe that you can, if you choose to be really intentional with it, get as much done in one lifetime as you need to go from being in a lower vibrational state to being basically an ascended master. I don't think you need to come back 7, 8, 100, 200, 800, 1,000 times if you don't want to. From what I've been reading and what I've been discovering, it says that some souls choose to keep coming back because they don't want to ascend into a godlike
Hmm.
um experience. They don't want to be absorbed back into source. They don't want to become this ascended master that's then going and having to guide all these people. Some people really love this earth experience of coming here, experiencing the sorrow, experiencing the joy, experiencing the things that we can touch, because this physical 3D reality is very different from anywhere else that you can choose to incarnate. A lot of places that you can choose to incarnate, things happen instantly. So manifestation isn't really a process. It's not really a journey. It's not really something you need to learn how to master. Even people in the spirit world that have spoken to different mediums have come back and said it's really weird now that I'm in this heavenly state, right? It's almost like I speak something into existence and it pops in front of me immediately. There is no time that you're dealing with. You're not dealing with gravity. You're not dealing with this lower density version of reality. And so some souls like that. They like coming to this earth game where it's a little bit slower. Maybe they want to reincarnate 100 different times and take a little bit longer to learn their life lesson. And then there's some people that come here that are like, yeah, I'm done coming back here a million different times. I'm just going to lock in and just master whatever I need to master because I'm done with this. And I've seen people on both ends of the spectrum. And for me, the thing that's been interesting about my life is I feel like first of all, I know that I signed up for everything that I've gone through so far, including what felt like back-to-back situations that were just really traumatic, really dense, really like dark, almost like being plunged into this darkness. And I know that I signed up for that for a couple of different reasons. Number one, it felt like I chose that this lifetime was going to be the lifetime that I got as much done as I possibly could. And so what usually takes people 50 years to journey, I had to do it in like 20 years, right? So in order for that to happen, things have to happen back to back to back really, really, really fast. So that's the first reason I believe that happened. The second reason I believe it happened is so that I'm grounded, I'm humble, and I can relate to hundreds of thousands of different people because I've personally journeyed through so many different situations and experiences. So that now that I've decided, you know what, I'm done with the struggling, I'm done with the suffering, I actually want to shift into the more fun, the more lighthearted part of my journey, which was a decision. It was a choice of being just sick of being anxious, sick of living on a timeline where things weren't working out for me, being highly aware of the fact, even from an early age, that things should be working better for me and not understanding why I was getting the worst versions of people, places, and things, but just having this recurring thought from like when I was like really little, like, this shouldn't be happening. Like, I should be experiencing a different version of Earth. It was like I was highly aware of the fact that there was another version of Earth that I could experience. Because if I was experiencing a version that wasn't preferable, that meant on the flip side of the coin, there was a version of Earth that was preferable that I could have access to if I just figured out how to access it. And so in 2023, at the end of 2023, even though I had had a lot of the gems dropped in of energy healing and meeting different people and doing some of the inner work and being isolated and having a near-death experience where I had to choose, am I going to go into the golden light or am I going to come back? And having all of these different upgrades that I didn't really know what was happening, and having either my highest self or my spirit team come in and give me step-by-step instructions. I didn't know what the voice was because I was like, I don't know what this is that I'm hearing, but they're giving me really specific instructions. And all I know is when I do what they tell me to do, my life gets better, right? Like it was like I was on a journey, but it was by accident. It was like I was being led through this journey, but it wasn't intentional. And so at the end of 2023, I just decided I'm sick of not being in control. Like, I want to make the choice. I want to make the decision to work with all of these different universal laws that I've discovered, work with the energy of manifestation, be really intentional with crafting and creating the life that I want. Because it was crystal clear to me at that point that God, source, the universe, something higher than myself was very real. It was very clear to me at that point that I had spiritual gifts that I was running from, and I didn't know how to use them in a way that felt like it felt like a burden at first, like being able to see beyond the veil, feel negative entities, see dead people walking around. Like that felt like a burden. It didn't feel like a gift. It felt like a burden. But I knew that there must be a light side of it, like if it was a gift. So learning how to use that in a way that felt good, learning how to use light language in a way that transcended religious confines of you're not allowed to do this, or you're only allowed to speak in this language if there is someone present that can translate exactly what you're saying. Otherwise, it's a distraction and it's evil. Like having to drop all of those ideas and just be like, I'm going to quantum leap my life because I'm sick of feeling anxious. Obviously, my journey has been extremely intense up until this point. I have to be here to help someone besides just myself. My body was heavily rejecting working for anyone else, like heavily rejecting it. So I was like, okay, I know I'm supposed to be in business for myself. I don't really know where to start, but let me just set the intention. I'm just going to set the intention that 2024 is going to be my quantum leap year. I remember watching a documentary with Jim Carrey in it, who's a master manifester, incredible. Like if you do research on him, he's manifested every single movie role he's ever had. He's manifested his first $1 million. Like he had this moment in the documentary where he said he went into a field and he looked up at the sky and like stretched his arms out and screamed, "I'm ready," at the universe, right? And so I was like, well, 2024 is going to be my quantum leap year. Guess what? I have to do that too. So I remember going into the rain in my backyard and just looking up at the sky and like stretching my arms out and being like, I'm ready. Like, and it was like in that moment, I even feel chills as I say it now because it was like something broke open. It was like, all right, let's go. So I just feel this like energy go boom. And then things started happening really, really, really fast. And what I share in the How to Jump Timelines Academy pretty consistently that I see not only me go through, but a lot of students go through is the purging process starts, right? Where everything that's no longer working for you has to fall away. So that's what happened to me for the first like 4 months of 2024. It was like, can you hear the baby crying on your end? Okay, let's pause this for 1 second. We'll cut this part out and then I'll get back. All right, so let's back up a little bit.
Take me back to that moment in the field. So you made that decision, and like I really want to understand how it felt for you and how others can apply it in their life. That moment of like,
right,
we're going, let's go.
Okay. Yeah. So I had taken this inspiration from Jim Carrey. I'm like, well, if he went out into the field and he was like, I'm ready, like, let's go. I felt like I needed to have a moment like that. Do I feel like everyone needs to have this like crazy cinematic moment where they go out into the rain and they look up at the sky and they're like, I'm ready? No, because it's all about the energy that you're bringing to it, right? Like it's called opting in. It's like because I choose to. And my husband and I have been talking about this a lot, this idea of because I choose to. And there's a moment in The Matrix even where Agent Smith is asking Neo, like, why? Why do you just keep getting up? Like, why do you just keep trying? Like, why? Why are you doing this? And Neo looks at him and he goes, because I choose to. And so that moment that we have as humans of opting in and choosing, that's where the free will comes in, right? Like, of course, we have the option to just kind of let our lives throw us around, kind of like how my life was throwing me around. I still had divine experiences. I still had divine intervention. I still had these moments of knowing that almost like there was people on my spirit team that were moving my husband and I around like chess pieces, moving us out of the way of danger 6 months to a year before anything bad happened. And then realizing, holy shit, if they hadn't moved us, something bad would have happened to our family. So I still had the protection because I'm a divine creation, because I have that God source energy in me, because I have a spirit team. Like all of us that are walking around having a life, even if we're not really tapped into I'm connecting with my spirit team today, or I'm manifesting my dream reality, or I'm choosing to play with quantum physics and activate a new timeline. We can accidentally be doing some of these things and or experiencing divine protection simply because that's what is afforded to us as humans. But the power that we get to unlock is in the choosing. It's in the saying, you know what? I'm sick of life just deciding things for me. It's kind of like when we talk about in Mystical Money Mastery, going in and looking at numerology behind what is your personal year saying? What is the collective year saying? What is the energy that you can expect this month? I went years and years and years without knowing that that existed. It doesn't mean that the energy wasn't still there. I just wasn't aware of it, right? So being able to really opt in to be intentional with I'm aware of this energy and I'm aware of how I'm going to use it. I'm aware of my life path. I'm aware of my destiny number. And now I choose to opt in and use it. So the free will part, I think, is the opting in. I think we all have free will. And I think if you choose with your free will not to opt in and not to do the thing, you have another chance. I do believe that we come back in a different lifetime, and I do believe that we get to try again. I don't think it's like, oh, if you waste your one life here, then sucks to be you, and now you're going to float in a void somewhere. I don't think that that happens. But yeah, I had that moment where I chose to opt in, and once I did, it was like when I actually chose. It wasn't just the words I was saying; it was the energy that I brought behind it. Of
Yes.
I want to choose. I want this. I want it so badly that I don't care what I have to do. I don't care what it takes. I don't care what has to fall away. I don't care who I have to become. I don't care how much work I have to put in. I don't care how much I have to let go of. I don't care. Like, it was like complete willingness, complete surrender. When that happened and I had that moment of just looking up at the sky and the rain and screaming, I'm ready at the universe, and feeling that energy being activated, it was really powerful. And in the same way that even though we have these really beautiful spirit teams and ancestors and all these people that want to support us, the free will portion of that is they actually can't come in. They're not allowed to interfere and do things on our behalf without us asking. And so I think the free will is opting in. The free will is being like, yes, I want this. And then fully accepting not the consequences of what that brings, but fully embracing the journey, knowing that it probably is going to get worse before it gets better. Going through that purging process, like the first 4 months, 5 months of 2024 were fucking brutal. It was like thing after thing after thing after thing. Like, lost my corporate job, watched all of my freelance clients completely drop me. My husband loses his job. Like, all of my credit cards get maxed out. My savings account that was at 5 figures now goes to 0. My checking account is overdrawn. There's no money coming in. I file my taxes. They flag it for some weird thing and like delay the refund for like almost 90 days. Like, then it's like I'm getting in weird fights with my mom. Then I'm getting like debt collector calls on my dad's behalf who I haven't spoken to him in years. And then I have people that I've had like major issues with calling me up on the phone to like try to talk to me. And I'm having like I'm literally driving in the car and the wheel on our car goes flying off. And it's just like, I literally looked at my husband. I was like, not us driving until the wheel literally fell off. Like, it was just like thing after thing after thing after thing. And it was so intense. And while this is happening, it was like I knew why all of these things were happening. And so I didn't have a why me, why is this happening to me reaction. I was like, oh, this is so interesting. Like, every bad thing that happened, I was so curious about it. And I was like, oh, wow. I didn't realize that this was going to bring up another trigger. I didn't realize that like this little piece over here was something that was still holding me back. I didn't realize that I still had resentment towards this person. I didn't realize that this was actually one of my hidden fears that now the situation is bringing up. And so I had just made a commitment to myself that every single situation that came up, no matter how intense, no matter how uncomfortable, no matter how painful, I was going to fully lean in because I chose to. I chose to lean into every single one of those situations. And it was emotionally exhausting. It was so exhausting, but it was like I knew I knew what I was going towards. And I just kept saying over and over and over again to my husband, to myself, to anyone I would have a conversation with, 2024 is my quantum leap year. 2024 is my quantum leap year. 2024 is my quantum leap year. And I meant that shit. Like, I was like, I don't care what I have to do. 2024 is my quantum leap year. And I remember my husband getting to a point where he was looking at me and he was like, why are you trying so hard when it seems like all these bad things are happening? Your business isn't really taking off. Everything's moving really slowly. Your income's even like slowing down, because I remember having to pivot from being like a faceless account to showing up as myself. That was even a whole like fear of visibility, getting past that, being able to put myself in the spotlight and show up like as my true essence, as my true spirit, right? Like all of these different lessons I had to go through. And when I made that transition from faceless to showing my face again, it was like all of the progress seemed to stop. Like the followers stopped coming in. My business income completely dropped again. And I remember my husband being like, why did you make that choice? Like, why would you do that when what you were doing before was working? And I remember like sobbing on my closet floor to the point where I felt like I was going to throw up, because I was like, I don't know. I just feel so led. I feel like I can't stop. I feel like it's just like go time. Like I was just like in this vortex of like everything that they tell me to do, I'm doing. And it was like during this time of purging, I remember, this sounds insane. This sounds like I'm exaggerating a little bit, but I was doing like a minimum of 8 hours a day of self-development. So I'd be like changing diapers and washing the dishes with like a podcast in my ear. And then my husband would come home and I'd be like, it's time for me to go meditate. I would sit there and do like deep, like energetic clearing out work, hypnosis sessions, like really going in for like 2 hours. Then I'd come back out. Then I'd be like listening to music that was like certain frequencies to help. And then I was like, the kids would go to sleep and then I would be up until like 2 a.m. meditating again. Like, and this was day in, day out, day in, day out, day in, day out for months. And I remember this was like when I discovered the How to Jump Timelines process, because I was doing so much work and so much research and absorbing so much content that I started to piece together things that I was like, oh, I think maybe if I put this together with this and then do this, then it will work. And it did. And so then things really started picking up. And like at the beginning of this podcast session where you said, what would make this a win for you? And I said, just the conversation, like us being able to be in the vortex. And that's all I need, because I've noticed that every time that I say yes to being in a space with someone where I get to just ooze and gush about my journey and the universe and how wonderful everything is, that in itself creates a frequency that shifts things. So I remember right after I had channeled the How to Jump Timelines like process, I had about 9,000 followers on Instagram, and this woman who had 50,000 followers reached out to me, and she was like, oh my gosh, I would love to just do like an Instagram live with you. We're going to repurpose it to go on the podcast. Would you be open to it? Like, I can't pay you or anything, but like, I'd love to have a conversation. And immediately I was like, yes, let's do it. So I go in and I do it, and I'm just, we're having one of these conversations like you and I are having now, where everything's flowing and everything's great. And I remember getting off of it and just feeling viscerally like something had shifted. And I didn't know what it was, but I knew that something had shifted. And then I remember opening my DMs that night, and there was a woman there that was like really struggling. She was having like this emergency moment where she couldn't pay me for coaching, but she really needed help. And I didn't really have much going on at that point. I was like, well, I just did this podcast, so I'm already in the energy of like giving up my time and energy. And I'm kind of feeling this like vortex, so might as well spend some time, speaking with her. And my goal was to be able to stay up that night to watch my account go from 9,000 to 10,000 followers and just like really celebrate that. Well, instead of it going from 9,000 to 10,000, all of a sudden it was like thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of followers started coming in. And I was like, what is going on? And it was a video that I had posted like 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, that randomly started going viral, that Spirit had told me to create. And it was like while I was creating the content, it was like I felt like I was energetically encoding almost like a beacon of light, like a message to those who needed to find me. And it felt really genuine when I was filming it. Like, it felt like it was really coming from like a true place. It wasn't coming from a place of like trying to go viral or trying to like get people to follow me. I just created what I felt like I needed to create. It kind of flopped at first. So I was like, whatever. I did this podcast, helped this lady in my DMs with like a free session. And then it was like the floodgates opened and I went from having 9,000 followers. This was like 7 months ago.
Yeah.
To now having almost 180,000 followers, which is insane. I was never able to do that before. And I worked in social media for like 10 years. So I was like, what is going on? So I love having conversations like this. I love the energy that's like generated just by like being in each other's space. And yeah, it's been a journey.
Do you think it was that podcast that was like the final straw, the portal that created that? Plus, then the woman reaching out, I think there was some symbolism there of continue to give, continue to serve.
Exactly. Yes. And I remember right before, and okay, so this was the interesting part about this. So I remember as I was going through the purging process, as I was going through like all of these bad things happening, I had no reason to believe that I was abundant. I had no reason to believe I was wealthy. I actually had every reason to be like, I'm a fucking loser. Like everything in my life is going to shit, right? But I became highly aware that the lesson was that I had to become completely neutral around my money situation, have zero reaction to it, almost gaslight myself into believing it wasn't even true, like what I was seeing in front of me wasn't even accurate, and feel abundant without having anything. And so I just kept doing that, right? And it was like, I remember about 2-3 months in, at the beginning of 2024, I was like, I want $20,000 months. Like, that's what I would consider a quantum leap, is like going from making $5,000 a month in corporate America to making $20,000 a month on my own business, or however it wants to flow to me. So that's what I had defined as like my quantum leap. And I remember like 2-3 months in, I'm like in the negative. All of my stuff is completely maxed out, right? I have no reason to believe that this money is here. And I remember getting to the end of the month and just gaslighting myself in a positive way and being like, well, do I have any proof that I didn't make $20,000 this month? Like, what if I did, it just somehow got delayed and it just hasn't found its way to me yet? What if I did on a different timeline already make $20,000? And so if I keep doing the work, I'll just catch up to the timeline where I already made the $20,000 this month, and then it will appear in my reality. And it sounds insane, but I started doing that for the next like 2-3 months. The next month would happen, I'd make like $1,000, and I'd be like, but what if I didn't? What if I actually made $20,000 this month? Like, what if this that I'm seeing in front of me isn't real and I actually made $20,000? So I started doing this like every month for 3 months. And I remember in June, my business made $71. And yet still I was like, but did it really though? Or did I actually make $20,000, right? So then the How to Jump Timelines process comes to me. The audience starts to come to me. And it was like a culmination of leaning in, going through the purging process, saying yes to every single uncomfortable situation, gaslighting the hell out of myself and being like, but am I really broke? Or like, did I actually make $20,000 this month? And then I remember Source being like, you need to give more. Like, you need to be more generous with like your money, your time, your resources. And I'm like, I don't have anything. So I remember right before the podcast, I was sitting in my car and I was filming a video, and I don't even remember what it was, but it was definitely for my business. And this man, I start to feel like someone's watching me. And I already don't love that feeling if I'm like sitting alone in a parking lot as a woman, but like I start to feel like someone's watching me. And sure enough, this guy's watching me like film this video on my phone, and he approaches me and like knocks on the window, and I roll it down like, yay much. And I'm like, yes, how can I help you? And I remember him like spinning this whole story about how he's been stuck there and he only needs a few more dollars. Anyway, it's like total BS. Like all of my discernment alarms are going off that like this man is totally lying about why he needs the money, right? And I'm also highly aware of the fact that because of how people react to unhoused people that are asking for money or resources, that he has the need to come up with this story around why he needs the money, right? And so I was like, that's fine. He's lying to me about why he needs the money, but source is telling me I need to give him the money that I have in my wallet. So I open my wallet and I have $9 in there. And when I tell you it was the last $9 to my name, it was genuinely the last $9. All of my accounts are completely maxed out, completely at zero. But me in my happy delusion, I'm like, well, I just made $20,000 this month. So hey. So I remember giving him the $9, and then just it was like these little moments of feeling like something unlocked, something unlocked, something unlocked, right? It's like things lining up. So I give this man my last $9, and because I didn't have any more money to give, I was like, well, how else can I give? Like, how else can I be activating the divine law of compensation by feeding into the universe and taking care of people? Which is also why I started doing the free little mini Reiki videos, because I'm like, well, I know that the universe is going to give back to me if I'm just consistently giving good energy to people and helping people and making educational content. And I know that it's going to come back. So it was a lot of little things lining up. But then I remember August happens and it was like floodgates are completely open. Followers are just pouring in. And I remember having my first $60,000 month. And I went from $71 in June to $2,000 in July to $60,000 in August. And the interesting thing that happened was after the $60,000 months, it kind of went back down to about $20,000 a month, but it hasn't dipped below that. And I had this moment of realizing, oh, I actually did make the $20,000 a month every month that I was gaslighting myself
Wow.
into it. The universe just gave it to me
As a
in
lump
one lump
sum.
sum before giving me the $20,000 a month that I had asked for after that. So now I'm manifesting $100,000, and I'm highly aware that it's going to be kind of similar because I've been in this energy of $100,000 for a while now. So I know that whenever that next leap happens, it's probably going to be a lump sum back pay, like
Nice.
retroactive pay
Nice.
for what I have already accumulated before it evens out to like the six figures that I'm manifesting. So it's really, yeah, it's just been like a really interesting journey. But after that shift happened, I can confidently say like 2024 was incredible in like every way, shape, and form. And like I calculated the other day how many students and I've been able to serve in the last year. I've only had the doors open for a year, and I have over 9,000 students now,
Wow.
which is insane. So free will is beautiful, but also, can you imagine if I didn't say yes?
Mm.
Right? Like all of those people that desperately needed healing guidance, needed that quantum leap, needed to activate a new timeline for themselves, needed to heal pieces of themselves. And if I had just stayed in my, I don't want to do it, or I'm too scared, or I don't want to opt in, it's like I become more and more aware of the fact that me increasing my abundance heals the world on a scale that it's beyond just me, right? Like now I'm able to donate all the time, and I do that really consistently. Sometimes I'll open my Instagram only with the sole intention, and I'll literally ask source in the universe, like, hack my feed for me right now so that you show me exactly who needs me to donate to them and where. And they will. It'll be like, this person's homeless. This person, just left a domestic violence situation. This animal needs help. These people are helping this group of people over here, right? So, yeah, it's really beautiful because it's like, yes, becoming highly aware of the fact that these things are choosing me, but I'm choosing them back. Being highly aware of the fact that it's such an honor to get to channel these different things, being highly aware of the fact that all of this is possible because I opted in, because I used my free will to say, yes, I'm ready, I'm going to do this. And just then consistently, not only just having that one moment of leaning in, but every single day being like, this is my quantum leap year. And if I'm doing
Yes.
8 hours of self-development today, that's what it's going to take. Do
Yes.
I still do 8 hours? No, but I'm still very consistent with, okay, it feels like I need to go and like clear something out here, or I'm feeling a lot of grief come up. I think I need to process that, or I'm feeling led to buy this book, or I'm feeling led to
Mm.
watch this video, or it feels like I need to do some visualization right now. So it's a forever journey, I think, of going in and consistently being willing to do the inner work. And the more that I do that, the more I become a vibrational match for other people to come into my field, right? I can't even tell you how many times I've had a student come in and they post something in the community or they message me with a problem that I just navigated the week before.
Yes.
And so it's like, if I wasn't able to navigate that and find the solution, they wouldn't have been a vibrational match to then fall into.
I have the same thing with my coaching clients. Like a coaching client will come in
right.
and they're going through something and I'm going through the exact same thing, but just a few steps ahead. I'm like, this is incredible.
Yes.
Like, how is this happening?
Yeah. One of my favorite coaches in the world said, you only need to be 10% ahead of your student to be 100% of service to them.
Oh, I love
and
that.
It's so true. It's so true because it's like, and I think that also helps with laying down any type of I'm not good enough or I'm not strong enough yet or I'm not smart enough yet or I'm not, further along yet. Like even launching Mystical Money Mastery, I was like, should I wait until I'm having $100,000 months to like launch this? And then I was like, no, because the principles that I've learned, first of all, like even manifesting more than 6 figures from a business in less than a year is still incredible. There are still students that need me that are at that level. And then as I do the work and as I continue to lock in $100,000 months, $500,000 months, $1 million months, it's simply going to increase the capacity that I have to hold more clients and to attract those people that are navigating that and want to be able to lock in 100, 500, $1 million months. But I've also really discovered on this journey, and I've seen this happen with people so often where they know what their purpose is, they know what their calling is, they have these desires, and I think that that's how it speaks to us. Like you asked me before, how do we know if it's free will? How do we know if it's destiny? I think we always have free will, but I think our desires are the thing that are implanted in us, almost like a compass, almost like a guidebook. Because if you really compare desires with other people, a lot of the times they don't have the same desires as you. Whether it's like the style of house that they want, the style of car that they want, the type of partner that they want, the level of income that they're desiring. Like all of us have these different desires. So I think that your blueprint, your guidebook is already built into you. You already know what you want. You already know where you need to go. Yes, you need to opt in. I think a lot of people are really scared to do that, like really scared. And I've seen people put their purpose and their passion off for years. And they just keep talking about how they're going to write the book, or they just keep talking about how they're going to become a coach, or they're going to start the business, or they're going to do the thing. And it's almost like I've noticed that when people want to always talk about the things that they're going to do, it almost creates this sense of a future that they're walking towards, that they're really excited about. But the idea of actually taking that future and bringing it into the present is really fucking scary. And so they don't actually want to make that decision to opt in and do the thing because it's comfortable for that vision and that desire to kind of stay out in the future and give them, it's almost like when you book a vacation 3 months in advance and you know that it's coming. And so you're like a little bit happier and you're moving through life a little bit easier because you know that the vacation is coming up. I feel like sometimes people leave their desires out in the future, almost like a future vacation where it's almost like they're rescheduling the vacation every time it gets close,
That's right?
But as long as it's on the books and as long as they know that they could opt in or they could allow that timer to run out and they could allow that desire to come in and become their dream reality, like that's enough for them. Even with like my How to Jump Timeline students, the number of people that I have that are like, I really want to do this, but there's something that's, I'm so scared of my life changing. Like I'm actually so scared of getting the thing that I want.
What do you tell them?
I say that's where the free will comes in. I can offer you resources to help you energetically shift things. I can offer you insights. I can continue to do the work myself and continue to lean in and say yes and do the really scary things so that I can be the role model. I can be the person that's 10 steps ahead of you, 10% ahead of you, so I can be 100% of service to you. I can continue to face my fears, but I can't force you to opt in.
What would you say to someone who they know they want the new reality, but they're just terrified of it? Like, for example, someone who they want to call in love or they want to call in a partner. And there's just a part of them that's scared of that person actually coming in because they know it'll create change and the ego doesn't like change.
Yeah.
But they know deep down it's the thing they really want.
Yeah.
How can we encourage them to make that decision, that leap? What was the turning point for you when you were like, I'm deciding this is happening? we're going
Yeah.
there and I'm willing to face all the consequences, no matter how scary they are in the moment.
I think I got to that point more easily because I knew what the alternative was. The alternative was so uncomfortable. Like to stay still and to stay in that situation was so painful that it was like I didn't have any attachments to my old timeline. It was
Yes.
like I was running towards the change, like, and even though my ego would come in, my subconscious would come in and be like, "But what about this? But what about that?" I think it also helps being aware that those aren't you. Those thoughts that come in and the feelings that you're having is simply just energy that's moving through. It's simply an emotion that you're feeling. It's simply a past version of you that's trying to keep yourself safe. For me, that awareness that, oh, this is working. That's why I'm feeling like this. And it's so scary doing the thing. Like, I even remember having a conversation with my mom during those 4 months where I had to bring up things that had happened in my childhood years and years and years ago. And when I tell you my body was having the most visceral reaction, like I was sweating, I was shaking, my heart was pounding like a million times. I felt like I was going to pass the fuck out.
Mm.
But I was like, this is it. This is the work. This is what I'm doing, right? And so I think it's a choice. It's like you have to get okay with getting a little bit uncomfortable. There is no way around it. There is no easy way to just like snap your fingers and like have it be there, because if it was that easy, it would have already been in your reality. So it's like the self-responsibility, the full self-awareness, the full like I'm taking responsibility for my current situation, all the choices, the beliefs, the actions, the opt-ins that have created my current reality, taking full responsibility for that, understanding that I absolutely can get to where I want to be, but I have to drop some things. And I think people don't choose to opt in because it feels like you're dying sometimes. Like it's like a death and a rebirth and a death and a rebirth. It's really painful. It's really scary. And there are some people that actually have near-death experiences where they actually do almost die before they make that switch. For me, what helped me was reminding myself that I chose this. Like, I opted in before I even came here. I signed soul contracts that said that I was saying yes to going through these certain things, that I was saying yes to learning these certain um, lessons. I also, not only being so uncomfortable with my current reality and like willing to do everything possible, I also reminded myself that if at any point in time I decided I got to this new reality and I didn't like it, I didn't like having more money, I didn't like having whatever I thought was my dream reality, like if I got to that point and I didn't like it, all I had to do was revert back to my old behaviors, my old beliefs, and my old way of being, and the universe would just reverse everything on my behalf and I'd go right back to where I was.
Mm.
So understanding that, like, if my current beliefs and actions and the way that I'm being right now has created my reality, and I'm good at that,
Mhm.
I'm really good at that. If I do the thing that scares me and it doesn't work out, I can just go back to who I am now and everything will kind of be the same, right? That's the same thing with money, right? Like I had this realization that I had a subconscious fear around calling in $100,000 a month because I felt like I wouldn't know what to do with that much money. Like I wouldn't know where I wanted to put it, or it felt like almost like too much for me. And then I just decided, you know what? Every time that I've stepped into a situation that felt uncomfortable, whether it's being in a relationship, being in a new friendship, being in a new house, being at a new job, calling in a new level of money, I've felt highly uncomfortable the first month while my body is like getting used to it. But the more that I practice with it, the more that I pay that rent at a certain amount, or the more that I show up at that job every single day, my body sinks into it. And so I just reframed it like, yes, I'm going to choose this, but I'm not going to expect myself to be perfect. And I'm not going to expect myself to be a master the second it falls into my reality. I'm just going to practice with it. So I'm just going to ask the universe to give me $100,000 a month to practice with. And
Uh-huh.
what's the worst that can happen? I lose it? Okay, I'll just make it again, right? So it's like, let's say you call in that relationship that you felt like you really, really wanted. A lot of the time, I feel like there will be almost like starter relationships where it gives you a glimpse into what you're looking for. And maybe that person has some of the attributes or some of the qualities that you're wanting, but then you're in that relationship for longer and you become clearer on, actually, you know what, this isn't going to work for me. Like, I do like these qualities, but in my next relationship, I would like these qualities and this to be a thing, right? And so it's like, you know what, I'm sorry, but we're not serving each other any longer. Then you have clarity on what your next relationship's going to look like. You get into that relationship and it's great for a while and you're like, this person has all of these qualities that I wanted and a few more, but there's still a few things that feel like, you know, it's just a deal breaker for me. It's just not going to work. It doesn't feel like this is my soulmate. It doesn't feel like this is who I'm supposed to be with. And so you can say no, thank you, and keep moving on. Even understanding that the people that come into your life as lessons have soul contracts with you. So they're opting in, you're opting in. It's almost like before you came here, you both knew that it wasn't going to work out, but you're teaching them lessons as well as they're teaching you. I feel like sometimes we get really self-absorbed and like, is this relationship working for me? Am I growing? Like, can they serve me? But it's like, the other person that's in a relationship with us is also using us as a mirror. They're also using us to look and see the things that maybe they don't want in a relationship, or the things that they didn't realize that they were bringing to the table that were toxic, right? Like, everything can be mutually beneficial. And I think when we go into it with all of our manifestations, holding the intention of it not only being mutually beneficial, holding the intention of, I'm not going to master this when I very first get it, when it very first drops into my field, but it's okay because I'm just going to practice with it. And eventually it's going to feel so solidified and solid in my nervous system that I'm actually going to get bored of it. It's actually going to be like so not a big deal that I'm going to be like, oh my God, can you even believe that I was like really struggling to call in $100,000 months? Like, do you know what I mean? Like
I know what you mean.
$500,000 months, right? Because it's the same thing. Now that I'm at $20,000 months, like there was a time where I couldn't even fathom that, where
Yeah.
it was like,
Yeah.
oh my God, I don't know what that's going to feel like. I couldn't possibly imagine making that. And now that I'm in it, it feels normal.
Yes.
That's the thing about like our human nervous system, is like when we normalize something, it's like, oh, that's it. Like, that wasn't that scary. But it's those opting in, those choosing to like get through the scary moments. I was just listening to a video before we got on here, and she was explaining our capacity to receive and our capacity to hold certain things, kind of like a rubber band, like a scrunchie, like when you very first get it and it's like really, really tight, and it's like you can kind of put your hair back, but you can't loop it around more than once. And then as you expand your nervous system by leaning in, doing the hard things, you know, figuring out where your edge is, and then intentionally pushing on that wall to create a little bit more space and a little bit more space and a little bit more space so that it's not as scary anymore, loosening that rubber band. So it's like when you pull on the rubber band, it gets looser and looser and looser and looser and looser, and it creates more capacity to receive and hold things. I think that's the key there. She also mentioned that sometimes if we're too aggressive with it too fast, we can snap the rubber band, which would be like us taking on too much, right? And like our capacity, it just being too much for our body. So I think a part of that is just, yes, being intentional with leaning in, doing the work, pushing yourself, pushing the edges a little bit, practicing, not expecting yourself to be perfect, but being really intentional with showing up for yourself every day, holding that expectation, also being willing to maybe take a step back. Maybe I'm very confident at $100,000 months, but let's say I wasn't, and I'm like, okay, no matter what I do, it's like my nervous system freaks out every time $100,000 a month comes up into my brain. Let me just take a step back and work on $50,000 months.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean? And like kind of creating these building blocks of not only believability, but these building blocks of what our nervous system is able to handle. So maybe that person isn't ready for a full-blown marriage, right? Like maybe they're not ready for a really super in-depth, forever, forever, forever relationship that is like totally vulnerable and like really exposing all the parts of themselves and feeling really like kind of tied down. And maybe you're not ready for that. Maybe that person isn't ready for that, but they can still go on dates. They can still get really clear on the attributes that they want. They can still practice setting boundaries. They can still practice giving themselves self-love and really tapping into the fact that the only reason that we really want a relationship is to invoke a sense of love and acceptance and joy and companionship. So how can you be that for yourself? How can you, literally gave up on like waiting for my husband to buy me flowers because that's not his thing. And I was really craving flowers. So I buy myself flowers every single week. And the more that I did it, it was like, oh, did I actually want him to do it for me or did I just want the flowers?
Right.
I just wanted the flowers. Like, you know what I mean? So I'm like, well, if I just want the flowers, it's like, yeah, I could wait for someone else to give it to me. Or
Yeah.
every time I walk past the flowers and I see a bouquet that I really, really want, instead of waiting for someone else to like take the initiative, I'm just going to give it to myself. And then the more that you do that, the easier it is for even that other person to look at how you're treating yourself and mirror that back to you. The same thing happened with my new like wedding band. So I've been asking my husband for years to get me a new wedding band because we got married when we were 19. And I was like, I joke around. I'm like, we were child brides. Like my hand was so small that he got me a really small ring. And then obviously I'm like past 30 now. So my hand grew. So my old wedding ring didn't fit. So I was like really wanting a new wedding ring. And I would like be looking at them on Pinterest and like trying, and it was like always on my vision board. But then I started asking myself, like, because he didn't seem to be interested in buying it. I was like, well, what if I just bought myself a ring? And I was like, and I didn't feel comfortable buying a ring to go on my ring finger, but I was like, what if I just like started finding rings that I could put on other fingers of my hands that felt really good? And so I did. I went out and I bought these 2 rings here. And there was something about going on, buying them, like opening the ring box, like seeing myself like opening the ring box, feeling the energy of like, I now have a ring, putting it on, feeling it. The next month, he went out and bought me a wedding band. Like it happened so fast when I was in that energy of I'm just going to go do it myself because I want to. But then it was like, oh, well, if she can go buy herself a ring, it's pretty easy for me to go buy a ring. And I also did it with the intention of, well, if I just buy these rings, I can tell him what size ring to get me.
That's right.
So I'll just like be in this energy of spending the money on myself, number one. Number two, being able to look down at a physical manifestation of wealth on my hand, which also was really helpful for selling my higher ticket programs because every time I started to feel like $800 was a lot of money or $700 was a lot of money, I'm like, I just dropped that on myself. I literally am looking at it right now. I'm looking at $800 right now. That's not that much. So minimizing that in my nervous system, knowing what size to tell him, and then just having that experience of holding a ring box in my hand and opening it. And what was funny is when he gave me my ring, he handed me the box. So he didn't open it for me. He handed me the box, and I had this moment a month later of opening up another ring box with the ring that I actually wanted him to get me. So I think a lot of the times that we're calling in love, we actually just really need to master that for ourselves. Like we look for someone else to help us soothe our nervous system, make us feel loved, make us feel happy. But sometimes the call is coming from inside the house. Like sometimes it really is as simple as, if I had a boyfriend right now or if I had a husband right now, like I would want him to buy me dinner. Okay, then I'm just going to buy it myself. And I'm going to sit here and I'm going to order what I want. I'm going to feel really luxurious and really like abundant eating this meal. And I'm going to be so grateful for it. And I'm going to acknowledge the fact that Source channeled the money to me so that I could buy this dinner right now. So I actually already do have a partner that provides for me. Like that was another shift that I made a few years ago because I was brought up in a religion where the man was supposed to be like the provider and the woman was supposed to just be kind of like the receiver. And for so many years, I was getting so frustrated that he wasn't providing at the level that I wanted him to, where he wasn't doing the things that I wanted him to. And I remember driving the car and just having this voice come in really clearly and loudly and be like, he's not your provider, he's your partner. Like, you guys are supposed to be doing this together, equals, not this. And then the universe was like, I'm your provider, like, work with me. And I was like, oh, okay. And I think that is also, it's closely tied to relationships because it's like we're moving into an era where we are our own forms of abundance. We're our own channels where we have our own desires, our own callings, our own passions, our own life purposes, our unique energy, our unique manifestation abilities, our unique ways of channeling that information in and bringing it to the world, and abundance being really closely tied to that. It's very similar to relationships where it's like when we don't expect that person to fill all the holes in us, and we just become the most healed, happy, vibrant, high frequency version of ourselves, we get to attract a partner that also has already done the work on themselves
Yes.
and is already a whole person. And then you have two whole people coming together. And so
Mhm.
sometimes that work looks like leaning in and doing the really scary things like fixing your fear of visibility. It's so interesting because we might think that posting ourselves on social media and marketing our business has nothing to do with calling in the love of our life. But a lot of the times, us not calling in the love of our life is a fear of visibility. We don't want to be seen. We don't want to be intimate. We don't want to feel vulnerable. So how can we practice healing that in another way so that it carries over? Maybe it's marketing your products online. Maybe it's showing up on social and sharing what you're passionate about. Maybe it's setting boundaries with someone at work, or speaking up and wanting a promotion at work and wanting to step into more of a leadership position and really be compensated for that. So it's finding ways that we can stretch that rubber band, finding ways that we can push our edges, finding ways that we can lean in and opt in every single time. Many, many times that even people will focus on abundance and stretching their capacity to receive in that area, all the other areas of their life start to shift as well, because when you're shifting and increasing your capacity to receive, it's not just in one area. You start to see, oh, my ability to hold discomfort in this area has increased, and because my self-love and the way that I see myself and my identity and my embodiment has increased in this area, all of a sudden I'm not okay with toxic friends, and I'm actually very comfortable not only being alone, but wow, it's so interesting that now these people are the ones that are attracted to me and want to spend time with me. I never seemed to have access to those types of people before. And, now that I'm working on what I believe I deserve income-wise, it's so interesting that now that I've increased my self-love and my confidence in this area, now all of a sudden I'm more magnetizing, and people can't keep their eyes off of me, and it's attracting new partners and admirers that I never had access to before. It's all connected, and it really is all about opting in, using your free will to be like, yes, I'm ready, I'm going to do this, and holding that intention, holding that vision of why you're doing it, but also knowing that if at any point in time you need to take a break, or if you absolutely hate it, you can just go back to the old version of yourself. You know what I mean?
That's right. That's right. You mentioned fear of visibility, and I'm curious, what was the thing that helped you the most with visibility, and I guess also with your Instagram journey? I find it so fascinating that you went from
Yeah.
from almost no followers to 150,000 or more followers. And
Yeah.
I know that for me right now, YouTube and podcasting is my main medium, but I do feel a calling to step more into Instagram. But every time I've tried, it sort of fell flat. So I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
I know the desire is there. Clearly, I have things to learn on that journey, and I'm curious. And I think one of them is definitely visibility, like fear of being vulnerable online. I'm curious if you can share anything on that topic.
Of course, yeah. So, context, I actually had a personal Instagram account that had 20,000 followers on it, but I had it for 11 years. And for 11 years, I could not get past the 20,000 follower mark. I could not, it was no matter what I did, after the first 5 or 6 years, it was no matter what I did, no matter what type of content I created, I couldn't get past that. So looking back on it, I realized it was because I really didn't feel aligned with the content that I was creating for that account, which was motherhood. I had really niched myself into being a motherhood creator. And so I had these subconscious beliefs that I developed, where I noticed that if I posted a picture with me and my kids, or just my kids, it would get a ton of likes. But if I just did a video of myself or a photo of myself, it would fall flat. So I almost locked in this belief that people weren't interested in me, that I wasn't interesting enough on my own. And so as my journey went on, I started getting more and more resistance, because the climate changed, the climate shifted. Back when I started the account, everyone was posting their kids online, and it was a thing to create a motherhood community or a parenting community on social. That was very normal. It was very the thing. I remember having hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of friends on there that were all sharing their motherhood journey. But as things progressed, it became like, no, your kids aren't consenting to be online. It's not safe for you to put it online. I think also as AI started to develop and these deep fakes started to develop, there was a fear around people taking pictures of your kids, creating like an AI version of them and like using them to leverage it against you and et cetera, et cetera. Obviously, we know like there are obviously people that don't have good intentions with photos of kids, et cetera. So I started to feel a lot of resistance. And so even though I would post, especially because I was making my money via brand collaborations, usually for like motherhood products, every time I posted, I was like feeling like this constriction inside. Like it was like I wanted more visibility, but I also really didn't
Hmm.
because I didn't feel comfortable with what I was posting. And it was like I felt like I had done it for so long that it almost felt like I was stuck, like I was trapped in a version of myself that I didn't like. And I remember when I went into corporate America, I remember like being one of the only, I mean, it's very rare to see someone who owns a business, who's a woman who also has 5 kids and is like really involved in their lives and isn't like hiring nannies and sending them all to public school. And so there wasn't really a lot of representation around that. And because of that, people were really like, how the fuck do you have time to do anything with 5 kids? And I really just kept getting grouped into this category of being just a mom, even though I was in corporate America and like delivering high-end work. Also, though, the brand I was working for remotely was a fertility company. So I remember my mom finding out how much money I made at that company and being like, oh, well, they just hired you because you're like the poster child because you've had like 1 million kids. So it's still ingrained into me that like the only reason I got this job and was making money and was like having some success in the social media space was because I was a mom.
Hmm.
So then while I'm on this journey, the investors of this company started taking notice of me because I started building a LinkedIn profile that sometimes had my kids because I was proud of being a mom, but it really was just like my thoughts. I was like creating myself as like a thought leader in the social media space. I was building a brand only off of me. And so one of the investors of this startup I was working at kind of started noticing me and asked me, I remember he asked me to get on a call, which my boss was furious about, but he gets on a call with me and he tells me that one of the other investors who was like on he was like on the board of directors and one of the chairmen and was the president of a hospital over on the East Coast had this this LinkedIn account that had like 20,000 followers and like a Twitter account, and he was launching a new book and he wanted to see if they could just bring me on board to do like some freelance work to engage his community, posting as him to like promote his new book. And I was like, sure, yeah, I'd love to. Well, the people that I was working with were pissed that the investors had come to me, and I remember them being like, why would they choose you? You're just a mom. They said that to me. And I was like, wow, this is so interesting that I'm stuck on this timeline where people just see me as just a mom, and I felt really confined. And so when I decided to move away from my personal Instagram account, I went to this Instagram account that had been sitting dormant for a year. It had like 1,000 followers on it, but I hadn't posted anything, so I had like zero reach. And I remember feeling like I don't know why I was so scared. I don't know why I was so scared to like show up as myself. I think it was because I still had this really deep seated, rooted fear that like I wasn't enough on my own. Like I needed all of these crutches, or I needed to be posting on behalf of a brand, or I needed to have a product, or I needed to have my kids in it. Like it was like me, myself, just as a person wasn't enough. Like I didn't feel worthy enough to be seen. And so for the first 2 months of my Instagram journey, I used that 1,000 follower account as a faceless account. So I still wasn't showing up as myself. And the interesting thing was at the time, I wasn't even selling my own product. I had purchased like a $500 master resale rights course and was using a faceless account to drive traffic to a product that wasn't mine. Well, now that I know about how the universe works and like resistance and all the things, there's very little resistance in you showing up with a faceless account driving traffic to a product that's not yours. There's very little skin in that game. There's really no boundaries to be pushed because you're hiding and nobody knows who you are. And if the customer doesn't like the product, it's not even something that you created. So there's no like hard feelings, right? So I was really taking the easy way out, but I started noticing that people started following me kind of like it was like I went from 1,000 followers to like 1,600, which still wasn't a ton, but I was like, 600 new followers within a period of 2 months was way more than I was seeing on this other account that I had had for 11 years. So again, it locked in this subconscious belief that people were only following me because they didn't know who I was. And I don't know where this thought came from. I think it was probably a carryover from being a teen mom, being really ostracized by the community I grew up with, being in an interracial relationship, having a lot of really, really hateful things said to me over the years being in this relationship, losing a lot of relationships that I felt were important to me. And then stepping away from the church and not even because I had used my following over the years to post Jesus this, Jesus that, I it felt like I couldn't like change my mind and become a different version of myself. It felt like I had almost made my bed, now I have to lie in it type of thing. And so I remember it reinforcing this belief that like people are only following me because they don't know who I am. And so when spirit and the universe came in and was like, no, you need to show your face. You need to be talking to the camera. Like we didn't put you through 11 years of boot camp training, having like 20,000 followers and making you an influencer and like reaching all these people to like have a faceless account. Like, hello, like, please answer the phone. So I like pick up the phone and I'm like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm just going to do it, right? Like, I'm just going to start making these videos. And because I was so deep in my self-development journey, I had so much that was on my mind, all these aha moments that I was having, all of this content that I was absorbing. I was very quickly transforming into a different version of myself. So I always had something to talk about because I was consistently inputting things into me and having really visceral, like, oh my gosh, this has changed my life moment. And so I just started sharing some encouragement, and I had become a certified life coach back in 2020. So I took some of the things that I had learned from there, even though that hadn't like really taken off for me. And I just started making these videos and my following completely stopped growing. So again, it's that same fear coming up of when people know it's me, they're not responding to my energy. They don't like me. I have to have all these crutches, all these props around me to make me interesting. So that was something I had to heal inside of myself. And it wasn't that I was afraid of being seen in general, because I had, like 17 million impressions, within those 11 years. Like I had been seen by millions and millions and millions of people. I'd been interviewed. I had been, I'd done collabs with people. I'd been featured on, accounts that had a lot of followers. So that wasn't the block. It was like I wasn't comfortable actually showing up as myself, me, without anything else, without a product to push, without my kids, without anything like that.
Because it hits directly on your self-worth, right? It's like there's nothing standing between me and them seeing their true
exactly.
meaning.
Exactly. And I think it also became an identity because this is another piece of it. When you choose to step into a relationship where you're choosing to be in the line of fire, you're choosing to be in a relationship where now the white community doesn't know what to do with you. The Black community is like, we're not so sure about you. You're getting hateful comments from both sides consistently. Now you have these kids involved and they're getting comments. It really turns on a mode inside of you where you feel like you're in a war. Like you're like constantly having to defend yourself, constantly having to defend your partner, constantly having to protect your kids. Being an ally, but almost being an ally because there's no other option. It's like not choosing to be an ally because it's something that you're opting into. It's like being thrown into allyship, because if you're not an ally, then who the fuck, you know what I mean? It's like there was a lot of expectations, I think. And so I think it almost became like, if I don't show my kids, then I'm embarrassed of them. But then if I do show my kids, then it's clear that I didn't have kids with someone inside of my race. So then I'm still getting these comments. So then I can't stop now. I have to just keep going. I have to continue with this portion of my identity that I've created because I opted into this. I chose this life. Like, I chose this marriage. I chose this relationship. And so now I have to like use my platform to do all these things. And it really just became, I wasn't making the choices anymore. Like, I
Mhm.
wasn't in control, and I didn't feel like I was being seen. I didn't even feel like myself. I felt like a version of myself that I had created to try to consistently prove to people that I was a really good mom, to try, because, it was like the comments I would get, like, oh, you're not doing their hair correctly. You're not doing this correctly. Like, you should be doing more research on this. Why haven't you spoken out about this? It was like there were so many expectations being thrown at me that account really became, yes, it was me, but it was like I remember making this commitment to myself that, like, this sounds wild, but I couldn't be the only one in the photo. Every single photo had to have something or someone else in it to make it more interesting, because me, myself, without my kids, without my interracial relationship, without my religion, just stripping back all of the things that I had kind of collected in a
Mhm.
weird way to create my identity, like me, myself, wasn't enough. And so when I went from being faceless to then saying, I'm going to show my face and I'm not going to promote this other person's work anymore, I'm going to create my own stuff. It was like my following completely stopped growing. It was for like 3 months. It was like 20 followers up, 20 followers down. I was like stuck at this 1,600 mark up until June. So it didn't grow at all for those first like 6 months of 2024. And I just got to a point where I was like, I don't fucking care. I don't care. I'm just going to keep doing it. I'm going to keep making the videos, even if 200 people see it. I'm going to keep going, even if I get no comments. I'm going to keep going, even if nobody follows me. I'm just going to keep making the videos. And I don't know why, but the more I did it, the easier I got. It was like I was already comfortable in front of the camera, so that wasn't a problem. But it was like getting comfortable with being the only thing that was the content, being comfortable with being seen for my intellect and my spirit, which was also a huge shift because I did modeling back in the day. And so it was like a shedding of, I remember I used to spend like hours getting ready, doing my hair and makeup to take selfies to put on Instagram to get comments. And it wasn't even from men because I didn't even care. I just wanted women to be like, oh my God, you're so pretty, girl. Like, but it was just like that external validation. Like, so I even made a commitment to myself that I wasn't going to put on makeup anymore when I did these videos, because I was really trying to be seen for who I was and the information that was coming through me and how my brain worked and how smart I was and how intelligent I was and how spiritual I was. And just like, I really wanted people to see beyond she's just a mom, or she has 5 kids, or she's in an interracial relationship, or, she used to be religious, or she's pretty. So of course people are following her because of her face. Like, I really, really just got to a point where I felt like I was dying. Like, I needed someone to see me for who I really was. And so even though the followers weren't pouring in when I started, I was like, this is better than that. Like, posting these videos, even if I'm talking to an empty room, it was like, it felt like I was more in my purpose than I was speaking to a full room of unaligned people, right? Like, so I was like, even if nobody sees this, it feels so good to be able to get this out. And then what was interesting was the law of detachment came in. So the law of detachment is all about not having an attachment to the outcome, just allowing things to flow as they may. So I actually got mad that I wasn't growing on Instagram, but I didn't want to stop doing the videos. But I noticed that with TikTok, every single time I would post, the way that the algorithm would work over there is it would send it, if it wasn't like blocked, if it was actually like for you eligible, it would send it to 200 random people, and they were never following you, but it would just send it to 200 random people, and it would see how those first 200 people reacted to you. And if those people commented, shared it, liked it, whatever, then it would choose another batch of people to send it to. So I noticed on TikTok, my videos weren't getting a ton of traction, but even with only 200 or 300 views, because it was sending it to a new batch of people every time I posted, I would get like 20 new followers. So I'm like, okay, well, I'll just forget about Instagram. I'll film all this stuff on TikTok. I know that every time I post, I'm going to get 20 new followers. And then I'll just take the content that I was filming on TikTok and repurpose it on Instagram. So I'll be putting it there, but I'm not going to be attached to what happens to it. So I'm just going to kind of like ignore it almost. And I'm going to focus on the thing that's giving me that feeling of momentum, that feeling of like, okay, I'm growing an audience that actually likes me for me. So that's what I did is after about 3 months of not seeing anything happening on my Instagram, but noticing that trend with TikTok, even though it was just a little bit, 20 followers here, 20 followers there, people weren't unfollowing me as easily. So I was like, well, I'll just do that. I'll just film my content on TikTok. I'll post it there. And then I will just repost it on Instagram, and law of detachment, whatever happens, happens. And because of that, it started growing. It was like all of a
Mhm.
sudden my Instagram started growing a lot faster than my TikTok. And I was like, well, this is weird. And now it's completely opposite where I love Instagram and I'm always on there and I'm doing things specifically for that, especially because I can use ManyChat to like message people on my behalf. And so for me, that builds my business a lot easier and faster. TikTok doesn't have as many tools, but I always post it on TikTok anyways, because like, why the hell not? And now, because the law of detachment is going towards my TikTok, that just grows like randomly. Like, I think I have like 74 or 76,000 followers there. And
Nice.
I just started that one last year. And I remember like reposting a video that had done well in the past, but then completely forgetting that I had posted it on TikTok because I don't really focus on it. And I knew that it was potentially going to get banned. So I wasn't like really feeling emotionally attached to it. I was really focusing on building Instagram. And it like went viral. And because I had more than 10,000 followers, I was part of the creator rewards program. And I got like $400 off of this video just randomly going viral that I didn't even know about it and even pay attention to it. So it's really been this dance of like showing up even when I feel like maybe people aren't going to notice me. Like, who cares? You know what I mean? I'm just going to do it anyways. Really just being detached from the outcome, really shedding all those beliefs around me not being enough by myself and being like, no, I am enough. I am enough by myself. People are interested in me. I do have something to offer to the world. Like, I do have a way of communicating and sharing things with people that makes it click. Maybe not for everyone. I still have mean comments. Of course, I actually don't read my comments anymore, like at all, ever, because there are some absolutely unhinged people that come into the comment section that with absolute foolishness that I'm like, I don't really care. I don't have time for that. So I don't even read my comments anymore. I'm actually very picky and choosy, even with like how many emails I read, because when you're in this space and you're doing this work and you are visible on that level, I think I reach like 3 million people a month now. So it's like there are people that are crazy that are attracted to the light. It's like moths coming to the light that just have nothing positive to offer, nothing positive to say, just want to be really hateful and nasty. So of course I still get that, but I think having my other account where I dealt with that for so many years, it's easy to not take it as personally because it's like they're going to throw things at me because of who I love. Like,
Mhm.
of course they're going to come for me in this area too. Like, it's like shitty people will be shitty people no matter what. So I didn't even really I really dropped any fear around like, oh, people are going to judge me, because of course people are going to judge you. Of course, they don't even like themselves. Like, of course they're going to like judge you, but I don't really care because I'm providing for my family and I'm doing something that finally feels aligned and I feel seen. But yeah, it's practice. It's really just continuing to put yourself out there and knowing and holding that expectation that things really can change overnight. Like, when the universe decides that you're ready to be seen by millions and millions and millions of people, like, that's it. There's nothing that's going to stop that from happening. And they have a million different ways of that happening. Like, you could go viral, someone else could discover you and like repost your stuff, and then that could go viral. Like, even somebody hating on you or trying to challenge you
Could be
could
in your favor.
backfire on them. And then like now you're viral. You know what I mean? So it's like there's so many ways. I feel like just putting yourself out there consistently, even when it feels really nerve-wracking, like, and it does, like, it feels there's sometimes that I post things, especially after this, like, recent election that I'm like, oh my God, people are gonna hate me for this. But it's like, it's that same theme of what's the alternative, staying unseen. That
Mhm.
feels really uncomfortable. Like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be invisible. I know that I was sent here to be seen by millions of people. So
Yeah,
the alternative of not putting myself out there is even worse than putting myself out there and getting a few people that are really nasty to me and don't like what I do or think that I'm fake or whatever. You know what I mean?
totally.
So,
Totally.
yeah, it's been a journey. And I think, too, riding the wave, understanding that just because you go viral right now, that it's like you'll access a new level and then you'll have to kind of sit at that level for a minute and really soak in the energy of being at 50,000 followers before you go to 100,000 followers. And then you sit at that energy for a minute and you feel into what it's like to lead 100,000 people before it goes to 200,000, right? So I've also completely detached from the obsessive need to go viral or to reach more people because I don't want to reach just a million people just randomly. I really, really am at a point in my journey where I want to reach the right people. Like, I want the right people that need me, that really, really need me to hear my message and be able to feel my energy and have that moment of like, this is the missing piece. Like, I need to get into these programs. I need to do this. I don't know what it is about her, but I'm so drawn to her. Like, I need to be in her space. Like, I want those people to find me as opposed to a million random people that are just going to consume or view me or witness me, but then it doesn't go any further, you
That's
know?
right. You want the right people to so much more valuable to have the right 1,000 people tune into you than 100,000 that are surface level.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
Micki, I could talk to you for hours. It's been so amazing and such a great flow. I think what I'd love to end our podcast with is two questions.
Sure.
What is one thing that you think anyone seeking greater abundance or greater wealth can focus on? And what are you personally doing now to get from that 20K set point to 100K? Like, what has been
Yeah.
this new expansion? Have you noticed new challenges in it or new lessons that you're discovering now as you're on your journey to 100K months?
Yeah. Okay. So the first one, the thing that was really valuable for me on my journey was starting with the laws of the universe. The way that I see it in my mind is you have to know the rules of the game that you're playing with. I 100% believe that this is a simulation matrix. Like, yes, it's 3D and it's physical and it's real, but it's also not. There's also things that I've experienced and things that other people in my world have experienced that have proven to me time and time again that it's actually not as real as we think. And so because it's a game, because it is malleable, time is malleable, reality is malleable, you can have whatever you want. You have to know the rules of the game that you're playing with. If you don't know what the law of attraction is, what the law of vibration is, what the law of compensation, the law of cause and effect, the law of correspondence, as above, so below, if you don't know the rules of the game that you're working with, you're really flying blindly. So I think if anyone's looking to uplevel their life in any way and start to be more intentional with manifesting their dream life, the 12 laws of the universe is definitely the place to start. And then to just not only memorize them, but become aware of how they're already working in your life, looking at how you've been attracting things into your life unconsciously, subconsciously, and really taking responsibility for that and understanding that if you've created your current reality, you can also create your dream reality. So that's the first one. The second one, the things that I'm doing consistently that I love, and I share a little bit more about this in Mystical Money Mastery. I love writing letters to money, like, because I believe that she's an entity. I'm consistently in communication with her. I'm consistently asking my spirit team to reveal to me any blind spots that I may have, any unconscious beliefs that I may have that may be blocking me. But then today, and I actually was just writing this before we got on this call, I just went back to the basics and realized that it is a matter of just deciding. And I was vacuuming my room before we got on, and I had this moment where this voice came in and asked me, without thinking too hard, what's the current time frame that you think $100,000 a month would fall into your reality? And without thinking, the first thing that came into my mind was 3 years. And I was like, 3 years. That's interesting.
Uh-huh.
So that means that that's what my current subconscious mind is operating on. Yes, I'm saying that I want $100,000 months, but also subconsciously, there's a part of me that hasn't pulled it from the future, from 3 years into the now, to be like, actually, what if it happens tonight? What if it happens in the next hour? And so because I knew we were getting on the podcast and because I've been able to use podcast appearances and these really beautiful conversations that I've had with people in the past as vortexes, I'm like, hello, maybe I could just decide right now that I'm going to drop any of the limitations. It's not going to take me 3 years. It's going to happen right now. And so, I wrote down a new set of affirmations, a new set of what I was going to program myself with. And I'll use the process that I use in the How to Jump Timelines Academy to go in and like reprogram that. And just making that decision of like, I've decided and really pulling it into the now. You know what happened as soon as I did that is I started getting nervous.
Wow.
I started sweating. I started
Wow.
getting like, okay, like this is a lot. And so that's a sign that number one, my body's recognizing and receiving the signals that I'm like, no, actually, this is happening. We're not doing this in 3 years. We're doing this right now, like right now, like tonight. Like tonight is going to be the thing. And even if it doesn't happen tonight, it's that like delusional, like, do I know that it didn't happen tonight? No. Tomorrow, I'll just do it again. And tomorrow and the next day, I'll just do it again. And the day after that, I'll just do it again. So it is a process of really brainwashing myself into that new frequency of I make $100,000 every single month. And part of that is being able to just declare and decree, even just to you, very openly, very forwardly, I'm making $100,000 a month. And it might not be in my bank account right now, but there's no doubt in my mind that it's going to be.
Yes.
Even just having that confidence of being able to say it to another person. I remember when I very first started even saying I was going to make $20,000 a month, I felt like I was lying and I felt embarrassed and I felt a little bit sick saying it because there was no proof in my physical reality that I was going to make that. But the more that you say it, the more that you declare it, the more that you decree it, the more that you like program it into your subconscious mind, like this is happening, this is real, and then doing that work to bring it from whatever timeline you think that it currently could exist on, could happen on, and bringing it into the now and being like, no, this is happening. Like, this is happening now. Like, we're literally doing this right now. Get on board. Even as I'm talking about that right now, I'm feeling sweaty. I'm feeling like my body's like, oh shit, she's serious. We're actually going to do this. We're actually doing $100,000 months. So for me, like, that's it. That's the decision. I've made the decision and it's going to happen. The law of detachment comes in where I let go of the when and I let go of the how and I just know that it's done.
I love that. Is there anything we can do right now in this podcast to like even further activate this money energy for anyone listening and for yourself as well to call in those $100,000 months?
Yeah.
Could we say a prayer to the divine or something like something activating?
Yeah. I think instead of outsourcing it in any type of way, like praying is beautiful, meditating is beautiful, I think anyone who's watching this right now and in the future, because the energy is going to be infinite and exists outside of time and space, I think being really intentional with sitting down tonight, really getting really clear on what your dream reality is, what your dream income is, and then having that moment where you ask yourself without thinking too hard, how long do you think it's going to take you? Like, what is the timeline that feels really realistic? And whatever that number is, whether it's 2 months, 6 months, a year, 3 years, 6 years, 10 years, or never, be conscious of that and be like, oh, this is so interesting. We're not going to judge it. We're not going to be like, I can't believe that, I don't believe in myself like that. I can't believe that, I'm not already there. We meet it with completely no judgment and we just observe where your current subconscious is at. That's really valuable information. It's just data. It's just feedback. So you write that down. I currently have the belief or I hold the belief or I've bought into the misunderstanding that it's going to take me 6 years to get to this goal. And then you're going to stretch yourself and you're going to say to yourself, what if it happened this year? Like, what if by the end of this year, I'm like sitting in my room on New Year's Eve, the clock's about to turn over. We're going from 2025 to 2026. I'm looking back at the year and holy shit, I actually did it. The thing that I thought was going to take me 6 years, I experienced that this year. It's February as we're filming this. So if you're watching this within February or even you don't even need that long. Let's say you're even watching this in June, right? Like you still have so much time. Time is just an illusion where you can collapse that. So then what I think is really beautiful is to really connect with the highest version of yourself that already experienced the full year, who already is sitting at the end of the year on your bed, reflecting back, watching the time count down and being like, oh my God, I did it. And just see if any downloads come through for you on how they did that. Anything that comes through on, was it a program you created? Was it you showing up more on social media? Was it you going to your boss and having that conversation that you didn't want to have? Was it you leaving the relationship that you know has been hindering you? Like whatever it is, see if there's anything that intuitively comes through immediately. But then on the next line of the paper, I just want you to start affirming to yourself, like, I decide right now that this is my new reality, and you're going to write down your goal and write it at least 3 times. More if you need to, but the more that you write it, the more that you're physically watching yourself write it, you'll start to feel things shifting in you. And you might feel scared, you might start sweating, you might feel sick, you might feel like, oh my God, I don't know if I can actually handle that this year. But just start to kind of program into yourself that this is happening, that this is a reality. You've chosen your current reality up until this point, and that's okay. There's no judgment. It served you so well up until this point, and it serves you until it doesn't. So that's okay if it's not serving you anymore. You get to choose a new reality. You get to choose to go in and say, I want to choose something different. I want to create a different reality. I want to expand myself and experience a new version of abundance that I've never felt before. Again, reminding yourself you don't have to be perfect. It's something that will take practice. Asking the universe to give you more money to practice with, and then holding zero judgment about how it comes in, how you allow it to flow from you, how you allow yourself to save it. I feel like one of the things that I'll add before we get off is spending money can be really expansive, but a lot of the times when we're calling in more money, we feel a lot of shame and guilt around how we're spending our current income. And or if we're in debt, like we feel a lot of shame around that, or maybe we feel like we don't deserve to make a lot of money or lock in our dream income because we haven't made good decisions in the past. And so really just dropping all of that and really affirming to yourself that you can have that dream income right now. There is no limits. Like you're the only thing stopping yourself. Like you're literally the only thing standing between you and where you want to go. The more uncomfortable that you can get, the faster it will fall into your reality. Like the more you can normalize holding that in your body, the faster it can fall into your reality. And if you want extra support, of course, I have my 2 programs. I have my How to Jump Timelines Academy, which is great for those who are just beginning their manifestation journey and don't have a practice or a process that they have that works really well already. And then if you've already kind of been in that world and you know how to manifest small things, but you want to 10x your income, like me going from like $20,000 a month to $100,000 a month, then Mystical Money Mastery would be good because I really do a deep dive on many, many different tools and rituals and practices and different subconscious reframings that we can go through to make that really easeful. So, yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful. Micki, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you for your energy, your wisdom, your time. I know that everyone listening to this benefited in some way and got a lot of value out of this. And hopefully we can meet up in a couple months when you're at 100K and catch up.
Of course. Thank you so much, James. This was so fun.
This was awesome. Thank you, Micki.